My wife cheated with her boss, then manipulated me into signing over $200, $0 worth of our house and savings, and now she's claiming I abandoned her during our divorce. I just found out she's been hiding millions in offshore accounts. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing out how my wife, Emily, turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. Honestly, the whole thing felt like it came out of nowhere, until it didn't. I mean, I always thought we had a solid marriage, a good life. We had our disagreements, sure, but nothing that seemed like it could shatter everything. Then I started noticing little things, her phone buzzing at odd times, her being unusually secretive about her texts, and her suddenly working late more often. It was subtle at first, but I guess I was just too comfortable to really pay attention. It all came crashing down one evening when I decided to check her phone out of pure curiosity. She'd been acting weird, distracted, distant. I figured maybe she was stressed about work or something. I didn't expect to find what I did. I found a string of messages, flirty, suggestive, downright inappropriate texts between her and her boss, Mark. I'd seen Mark around a few times, a slick guy in his late 40s, always trying to impress Emily. But I never thought she'd actually cheat on me with him. The messages were explicit, talking about their secret meetings, how much they enjoyed escaping together, and even plans for her to leave me. I remember feeling my stomach drop, my hands trembling as I scrolled through them. The worst part, she was lying about everything. She told me she was working late or at a conference when I asked. She'd even told me she was tired of me, that she didn't feel the spark anymore. That was a punch to the gut. Her openly admitting she was unhappy, yet she was still out there screwing her boss. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. That night, I confronted her. I threw her phone on the table and asked her what the hell was going on. Her reaction: she looked me dead in the eyes and denied everything, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things, that Mark was just a coworker and that I was overreacting. She told me I was crazy for even suspecting her. But I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she stammered for words, the way her face turned red. She tried to turn it around, saying I was neglecting her, that I wasn't paying enough attention, that I'd driven her to find comfort elsewhere. She claimed Mark was just a friend, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, that she loved me and would never do anything to hurt me, but I could see through her lies. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. Her words didn't match her actions. I knew I had to dig deeper, find out just how deep this rabbit hole went. In the days that followed, everything changed. I started noticing more signs, her secretive calls, her disappearing acts, her changing stories. I even hired a private investigator just to confirm what I already suspected. That's when I found out she'd been manipulating me financially too. She convinced me to sign over part of our house and some savings, claiming it was for family expenses, but it was really to fund her affair and her secret accounts. Turns out, she's been hiding millions in offshore accounts, doing everything she could to keep me in the dark. I was blindsided, furious, and feeling more betrayed than I ever thought possible. That's where I am now, trying to piece everything together, trying to figure out if I should fight for the marriage or cut my losses. It's a mess, and honestly, I don't even know who I am anymore. All I know is that Emily isn't the person I thought she was, and I'm not going to let her get away with this without a fight. After I found out about her affair with Mark, everything in my world started to crumble. I couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate at work, and every time I looked at Emily, I saw her differently, like she was a stranger wearing my wife's face. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was discovering how much she'd manipulated me financially. She convinced me to sign over a good chunk of our house and some of our savings, claiming it was for emergencies or investment opportunities. I was naive enough to trust her, and now I see how she used that trust against me. I remember the day I finally decided to do some digging. I had a gut feeling that there was more to her story, and I couldn't shake it. I started going through her emails and bank accounts, trying to find any clues. That's when I stumbled across a series of bank statements from offshore accounts I'd never even heard of. They were linked to her name, but the amounts were staggering. Millions of dollars tucked away in secret, hidden from me and everyone else. I felt my stomach tighten. I'd been played for a fool. All that talk about us and our future, it was just a lie. I confronted her again that night. I wanted answers, real answers. I sat her down, showed her the bank statements, and demanded she explain. Her reaction? She lost her temper. She called me paranoid, said I was spying on her, that I was overreacting. She spun some story about how the offshore accounts were for the kids, how she'd been planning to tell me but didn't know how. She called me a jealous husband, said I was just insecure and that I had no right to question her loyalty. But I knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes, the flicker of guilt, the way her voice cracked. I knew she was hiding something much bigger than I'd initially suspected. The more I pressed, the more her story fell apart. She started accusing me of neglect and of not trusting her, which was ironic since she'd been sneaking around behind my back. That's when I decided I needed to get serious. I hired a lawyer and a private investigator just to confirm everything I suspected. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into those offshore accounts for years, laundering our savings, hiding her assets from me. She'd been planning this for a long time, I realized. And all the while, she kept up her act, acting like the perfect wife, the loving mother, while secretly betraying me and draining our life savings. What really pushed me over the edge was learning about the extent of her manipulation. She convinced me to sign over part of our house, claiming it was for family security, but she used that as leverage to keep me quiet, to make me feel helpless. I was furious, feeling betrayed, angry, and helpless all at once. I started to see how deep her lies went, and I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I couldn't trust her, not after everything I'd uncovered. I felt like a pawn in her game, and I was determined to fight back. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle. She lied about everything, her feelings, her fidelity, her intentions. She tried to manipulate me into thinking I was the crazy one, that I was paranoid for suspecting her, but I was. I was just a guy who loved his wife and wanted honesty. Turns out she never loved me that way. She just used me to get what she wanted, our house, our savings, and now, even my trust. I felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner. I was so naive to believe that she was the person I married. Now I'm left with a mess of betrayal, financial ruin, and a broken heart. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I'm not going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. I've started the process of separating everything legally, and I plan to expose her for the liar she is. I want the world to know what she did, how she manipulated me, and how she's been hiding millions all along. I don't expect her to admit anything. She's too good at lying, but I'll make sure she pays for what she's done. Honestly, I feel like I've been punched in the gut so many times I don't even know which way is up anymore. The betrayal runs so deep, and I keep asking myself how I could have been so blind. But I guess that's what happens when you trust the wrong person. When I look back now, I realize I was just a pawn in her game, and she played it perfectly until she got caught. I don't know how I'll rebuild after all this, but I do know I can't stay with someone who lies and manipulates like she did. It's over. The days that followed felt like living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Once I uncovered her offshore accounts, everything changed. The house, the savings, the entire foundation of what I thought was our life. It was all built on lies. I had to act fast. I hired a top attorney, one who specialized in financial fraud and divorce cases, and I told him everything I'd found. I wanted to make sure she couldn't hide anything else or spin her web of lies even further. My wife, Emily, started to get aggressive. She saw the writing on the wall and began to turn on the charm, trying to manipulate me into backing down. She'd cry, call me paranoid, and accuse me of stalking her, which was so far from the truth I couldn't even believe it. She insisted that the offshore accounts were nothing, just some investments she'd been managing quietly, that she never meant to hide anything from me. She played the victim, said I was the one who was abandoning her emotionally, that I was suspicious of her because I didn't trust her. But I knew better. I knew her game. She was good at lying, and she knew exactly how to spin her stories to make herself look innocent. Meanwhile, she was still trying to keep the offshore money hidden, spending it on vacations, designer clothes, and even luxury cars, all while she claimed she was struggling financially. She was lying through her teeth, and I had the proof now. I had the bank statements, the emails, the transfers. I knew she had been planning this for years, and I was just another pawn in her scheme. What made it worse was that, even as I was gathering evidence, she was trying to manipulate the situation in her favor. She would call the lawyer, try to get me to settle quickly, say she wanted to make things easy for the sake of the kids. But I didn't buy it. I saw through her every move. I knew she was using the kids and her innocent facade to keep me from fighting harder. It was disgusting. I also started to realize how much she had drained from our joint accounts. She'd been siphoning money for years, funneling it into those offshore accounts, and I was just blind to it. I'd always thought we were careful, responsible with our money, but turns out she'd been hiding a mountain of cash. I found out she'd hidden at least $2 million, maybe more, in secret accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and other tax havens. I was stunned. I felt like I'd been robbed, manipulated, and utterly betrayed. How could she do this? How could the woman I loved turn into someone so cold, so calculating? The emotional toll was brutal. I oscillated between rage, heartbreak, and despair. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I was faced with the reality that she'd been lying to me for years. I wondered if I ever really knew her at all. I built my entire life around her, and now I was left picking up the pieces of a shattered marriage and a ruined trust. I kept asking myself how I could move past this, how I could recover from the betrayal of someone I'd trusted with everything. One thing was clear. I couldn't stay quiet. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, for the truth to come out. I decided to push forward with the divorce, demanding transparency and accountability. I wanted her to face the consequences of her lies, her manipulations, and her greed. The more I dug, the more I saw how deeply she'd woven her deception into every part of our lives. She lied about her feelings, about her fidelity, and about her finances, all to keep her secret life hidden from me. I also learned that she'd been threatening to take the kids away if I didn't accept her version of the story. That was the final straw. I knew I had to protect my children from her manipulations and lies. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar she'd hidden, and I prepared for a legal battle that I knew would be long and ugly. But I was determined. No matter how much she tried to manipulate, I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight to get my life back. In the end, I realized that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to fully restore. She played her cards so well, lying, manipulating, hiding her wealth, all while pretending to be the loving wife and mother. I felt like I'd been living in a carefully constructed illusion, and now that it's shattered, I see her for who she truly is, a manipulative, selfish woman who used me and our family for her own gain. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her get away with it. I'll fight for my rights, for my children, and for the truth. The legal process has been a nightmare, but I knew I had no choice. Every day I was uncovering more of her lies, more offshore accounts, more hidden money, and even some shady investments she'd made under different aliases. It was like peeling an onion, and every layer revealed something darker. I had to keep my composure, but inside I was furious. How could she have played me for so long? How could she have lied about everything, including her love for me? I kept asking myself if I ever really knew her or if I was just blinded by the life I thought we had. The divorce proceedings started, and Emily, of course, put up a fight. She was all charm on the surface, acting innocent, claiming I was the one who'd betrayed her, that I was abandoning her and the kids. She even went as far as claiming I'd been emotionally distant, that I'd neglected her. That was rich coming from her, considering I'd been the one digging through her phone and bank statements. She tried to spin it so that I was the villain, the one who ruined everything. But I had the evidence. The texts, the bank transfers, the offshore account statements. They painted a different picture entirely. Meanwhile, she kept trying to manipulate the court. She claimed she was destitute, that she'd lost everything because of my supposed abandonment. She even tried to claim I'd left her high and dry during the divorce process, that I'd refused to support her or the kids financially. That was a bald-faced lie. I had already secured a legal order for financial disclosure, and I had all the proof that she'd been siphoning money and hiding assets. I knew she was trying to turn the court against me, but I was prepared. I had my lawyer, my evidence, and a plan to fight for what was rightfully mine. The most shocking part came when I discovered she'd been secretly transferring money into offshore accounts right up until the day I filed for divorce. She'd been planning this entire scam for years, and I was just a pawn in her game. I felt so stupid for not seeing it sooner. She'd been convincing me to sign over parts of our house, our savings, all under the guise of security and investment, but she was just lining her pockets. I found out she'd hidden over $5 million in total, and the worst part was her denying everything, lying about how she wasn't involved in any of it. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, angry, and completely devastated. I kept replaying everything in my head: her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. I had trusted her with my life, my future, and she'd used that trust to destroy us from the inside out. I wondered how I could ever look at her the same way again, knowing what I knew. I also felt guilt for not seeing the signs earlier, guilt for not fighting harder, guilt for not protecting myself and my children from her greed and deception. But I refused to give up. I was determined to fight for my rights and for my children's future. I wanted to expose her lies in court, to make sure she paid for her betrayal. I started working with forensic accountants, private investigators, and my lawyer to build a case that would strip her of all her hidden assets. I knew she'd fight dirty, but I was ready. I didn't care about her tears or her fake apologies anymore. I just wanted the truth out there. I wanted her to face the consequences of what she did. Throughout this chaos, I learned one thing: trust is a fragile thing, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. Emily was the living proof of that. She played her part so well: sweet, caring wife on the surface, ruthless manipulator behind closed doors. I realized I'd been living in a bubble, a fantasy she created to keep me blind. Now that I see her for who she really is, I feel a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that I finally know the truth, and sadness that I ever believed in the illusion she sold me. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. I've learned that the hard way. The worst part is knowing she's still out there, probably planning her next move, still hiding her millions and pretending to be the innocent victim. But I won't stop fighting. I owe it to myself, to my kids, and to everyone who's ever been betrayed like this. I want her to see that she can't get away with lying, cheating, and stealing forever. I'll make sure she's held accountable. The court hearings have been intense, and honestly, I've never felt so drained in my life. Emily's lies kept piling up, but I had everything documented: her secret offshore accounts, the transfers, her attempts to manipulate the court. Every time she spun her sob story about how she was the victim, I just wanted to scream. She acted like she was the wronged wife, the one suffering because I supposedly abandoned her. Meanwhile, she was living a double life, secretly amassing millions while I was clueless. That realization hits me hard every time I see her fake tears and hear her pretend innocence. The most shocking moment came when the judge ordered full disclosure of all her assets. That's when everything unraveled for her. The forensic accountants testified, revealing the extent of her hidden wealth: over $8 million, tucked away in various offshore accounts, shell companies, and fake investments. The court also found evidence of her laundering money through multiple foreign banks, funneling our joint savings into her personal stash. Seeing that evidence on the stand was like a punch in the stomach. I felt rage boiling inside me, but I kept my composure. I knew I had to be strategic if I wanted to win this. Emily kept trying to deny everything, claiming she was misunderstood, that she'd only been trying to protect her family. She even accused me of controlling her and said I'd driven her to this point by being distant. That was a lie, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. I sat there, feeling a mixture of fury and heartbreak, knowing she'd lied to my face for years. I thought about all the times she said she loved me, all the moments I believed her. Now I see her for who she really is, a master manipulator, a woman who'd do anything for money and power. The judge finally ruled in my favor, awarding me a significant portion of the hidden assets and ordering Emily to pay substantial restitution for the fraud. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand that manipulating and betraying someone has consequences. I also filed for full custody of the kids, knowing that her manipulative nature and greed could harm them if she's left unrestrained. That was the hardest part, fighting for my children's safety and future, knowing she'd try to use them as pawns. Throughout all this, I've been reflecting on how blindly I trusted her. I kept telling myself that she was the love of my life, that I had to protect her, support her. But now I see how she used that trust against me. She was always planning her escape, her financial independence, her new life without me. I've come to terms with the fact that I was just a means to an end for her, someone to build her perfect facade around until she could break free. I've also learned some tough lessons about money and trust. Never again will I sign anything without reading every line. Never again will I let someone manipulate me into giving up control of my life. I realize now that financial abuse is just as damaging as emotional or physical abuse. Emily's greed and deception nearly destroyed everything I worked for, and I have to rebuild from the ashes. I know I'll never fully trust her again, and honestly, I don't want to. I've been betrayed so deeply that I don't see a way back to the person I was before, but I'm grateful I'm still standing. I have a good support system, friends, family, a therapist who's helped me process this chaos. I've learned that the worst betrayals can teach us something about ourselves, about our strength, our resilience, and our capacity to move on. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll rebuild my life piece by piece. I'll make sure Emily's lies don't define me, and I'll protect my kids from her manipulations. She can run, hide, lie all she wants. Her actions have consequences, and I plan to make sure she faces them. The biggest lesson I've taken away: never ignore the signs. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. Be vigilant, protect yourself, and never let anyone manipulate you into giving up control of your life. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, even if it takes years to reveal itself. And when it does, you better be ready to face it head on. Now that everything is finally out in the open, I've had some time to breathe and really process what's happened. Looking back, I realize how much I was blinded by love and trust, how I overlooked the warning signs until it was too late. Emily's betrayal didn't just break my heart. It shattered my sense of security, my confidence, and my belief in what marriage was supposed to be. But through all the pain and chaos, I've learned something crucial: the importance of vigilance, of never letting your guard down when it comes to your own life and finances. I've come to see that betrayal isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden behind a smile, behind seemingly innocent conversations, behind the very person you trust most in the world. I was naive to think that love could shield me from deception. It can't. No matter how much you love someone, you have to be aware, cautious, and prepared to protect yourself. Because when someone is determined to manipulate you, they'll do it in ways you never see coming. The financial aspect of all this was a brutal awakening. I never imagined that my wife, the person I thought I knew so well, could secretly amass millions behind my back. It's a stark reminder that trust must be earned and maintained, especially when it comes to money. Never sign anything without understanding it fully. Never assume that someone's intentions are pure just because they wear a smile or say they love you. Money can be a powerful weapon in the hands of someone willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate. As I move forward, I focus on rebuilding my life piece by piece. I've cut ties with Emily completely, and I'm working to establish a new foundation, one built on honesty, transparency, and self-reliance. I've also become more protective of my children, making sure they're shielded from the chaos and lies that Emily tried to impose on us. Their well-being is my priority now, and I'll do whatever it takes to give them a stable, honest life. This experience has been a brutal lesson in human nature, how someone can look you in the eye and lie so convincingly. But it's also a lesson in resilience. No matter how deep the betrayal, you can survive, learn, and eventually thrive again. It's not easy. Some days are still a struggle, but I've come to accept that I can't change what's happened. All I can do is focus on my future and make sure I never let myself be vulnerable like this again. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs, no matter how small. Protect your assets, your emotions, and your sanity. Because once a betrayal like this happens, there's no going back, only moving forward stronger and wiser. And that's what I plan to do. Moving forward, I will rebuild my life on honesty and integrity, and I will never let anyone manipulate me again.